And we are live. Me and my one viewer who probably just tuned in to see what kind of a shit show there would be this week, which is not going to be a shit show. I'm not going to yell at people or get angry, do stupid shit like I did last week. But title of the stream, Old Acquaintance, right? Which is the song you sing on New Year's Eve, right? May old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. That kind of thing. It's about letting go of things that aren't useful and are not going to be helpful to you in the new year. That's going to keep you back in negativity. So that's a good lesson to learn, and one a lot of people are probably going to need to practice. About an hour or so before while I was setting the stream up, trying to do some notes and think about what I wanted to say and how I want to say it. I saw a news item that President Donald Trump has signed the $900 billion stimulus bill, which will provide $600, a second stimulus check for every American. And I don't know how many, 700 billion to everyone else. Everyone is getting free money and you're paying for it. And that's infuriating to a lot of people. The government doesn't have any money. It borrows the money from a corporation called the Federal Reserve, which was created in 1913. It's a corporation that prints the money and then loans it to the government, and our government pays back that money with interest to this corporation. And the corporation was set up by Jacob Schiff, who financed the Bolshevik Revolution, and some others, probably J.P. Morgan and a few others. And all it cares about is making money, and it makes more money when more money is borrowed and spent. So I remember when I was a boy, Ronald Reagan was president, and he had like a $1 trillion deficit. And a $1 trillion deficit at the time, people lost their minds. It was in the newspapers all the time, and there was a dead clock in Times Square. And they said, oh, we'll never pay it back. It'll take 1,000 years. If you stacked $100 bills, one on top of another, they would go from the surface of the earth to the surface of the moon. I think our current deficit is something like $27 trillion. 27. So when Reagan, it was 1 trillion and people were having a meltdown, and now it's 27 trillion and people don't even bat an eye. Nobody even talks about it. And that money is owed to the Federal Reserve, and the politicians will make sure you pay it back. They will tax you. They will find something to do to make you pay it back. And I think we all know at this point that they will do anything, right? We spent nearly a year now wearing silly masks to stop a virus that's not stopped by masks anyway. And 99.7% of the people who get the virus survive. Small businesses have been destroyed all across the country, and they gave you $1,200 in March, and they're going to give you another $600 now. And there were members of Congress who said, they don't want to give you too much to encourage laziness, except those members of Congress have no problem sending, I think it's, was it $500 million to Israel? The Israelis aren't doing anything. They're getting free money, but Congress calls you a lazy bastard because you want some of your own tax money to survive in an economic crisis that was caused by the very government itself. We live in some pretty insane times. And a lot of what you used to hang on to, you have to let go of. Old acquaintance, you have to let it go. Acquaintance really means negative feelings and like feuds and stuff, and that's true. You need to let that go, but you need to let a lot of other things go, because we're heading into, as President-elect Joe Biden says, our darkest days are in front of us, and I think he's 100% right. The people that ran the Soviet Union, their cousins, their blood descendants in many cases, are now running the United States, and it's going to be really, really bad. And one of the characteristics about the Soviet Union was they caused 3 famines. The government caused famine 3 times, and people starved to death. I don't think that's going to happen here because we're much more sophisticated supply chains and more industrialized economy, much super efficient. But they can crash the economy 2 or 3 times before someone replaces them, and a lot of people are going to get hurt. You could argue they've already crashed it once. Donald Trump didn't help anyone. He left his presidency, I guess, in the hands of Jared Kushner, and Jared Kushner did as Jared Kushner saw fit. So, and we all have to live with that. So, yeah, there's no $2,000 coming. You're only getting $600. And so I very seriously want to just quietly ask you that when you get that money to please buy Bitcoin, because the anger you feel, that you wish you could throw it back in their face, that it's an insult to you, that it's a humiliation, that you have to accept it, that you wish you could give them the finger, that you wish you could tell them where to go. You wish you could tell them off to their face, and you'll never be able to do that. The other thing you can do is take that piddly little amount of money and get out of this system. If you had taken the original $1,200 stimulus and bought Bitcoin, that's how much money you'd have today. The $1,200 that they sent you in March, I don't know what you spent it on. But if you had bought Bitcoin, you would now have $4,800, and you wouldn't have had to do anything. So kick back, feet up. And this thing's only beginning. I've talked about Weimar, Germany. I've talked about Zimbabwe. Hyperinflation happened in Hungary as well, I think in the 1950s. And you haven't experienced that, and people don't think it's coming, but it is most certainly coming. At the time of this broadcast, December 28th at 10:45 East Coast time, the price of Bitcoin is now $27,200. When I got robbed of my Bitcoin in October 12th of this year, 2020, price of Bitcoin was $11,000. It isn't so much that Bitcoin's going up, but the value of dollars is going down. A lot of big people, really big people with a lot of money, are getting rid of their dollars and buying Bitcoin, including Elon Musk and a bunch of other people. You have an opportunity to get in ahead of them because they're big institutions and they move slowly and they move it enormous sums of money, but it has to be moved slowly with a number of different steps and checks along the way. So you have an opportunity to tell the government to go F itself, to shove it $600 where the sun doesn't shine, that you're going to do something else. And the reason why you want to do this is because the original stimulus, that $1,200, like I said, today, this very day, would be worth $4,822.50. The $600 you get from the government this time will be worth even more in the future if you turn it into Bitcoin. And you need to do that because they're going to destroy the economy. They're lunatics, they're insane, and they're incompetent. And there's nothing you can do to stop them. No one you can vote for, no one's going to take over, no one's coming to rescue you. This is not a happy thought. And you have to become an active participant in your own rescue, which means you're going to have to make decisions and you're going to have to live with those consequences. A lot of people are very frightened by that because it's very real. People on social media are already talking about riots and civil unrest and right-wing riots like Antifa did, and they're not going to do anything. No one's going to do anything. There's going to be no riots, nothing like that. There's too much to lose. Half this country believes that Donald Trump was cheated out of the White House, and the other half is happy that that happened because they hate him that much. Right now, that's not much of a division. It doesn't appear like an important division, but it is. It'll come out later. When hyperinflation comes, all this stuff, it'll be real civil unrest, really, really, really big. There's no faith in anything anymore. We had the Christmas Day bombing in Nashville, Tennessee, and I mean, the police hadn't finished putting the tape around the crime scene when people were saying the FBI is going to cover it up and we'll never get the real story. And I have no idea what's going on, but we're now living in a world where you cannot trust anyone or anything, and that's a scary place to be, and that's going to exhaust you quickly and put you in a very, very negative frame of mind, and the quality of your decisions is likely to suffer. So that's why I'm telling you to take this $600 free dollars. Don't pay off your credit cards. You're going to do that anyway. Take it and begin to build a life raft out of this really rotten system, because money touches everything, okay? It controls a lot of things and it touches almost everything. And it's hard to imagine because you haven't known anything else. But the money that's out there now, the green dollar bills that you grew up with, are becoming rapidly less valuable and will, in a very short time, and I mean like 10 years, 13 years at the outset, become worthless. And that's going to cause enormous problems. And if you don't have something to fall back on, and most of you don't, it's going to be really bad for you. So you need to, I'm going to ask you to please do this. It's the one decision you can make that you will look back on and be happy with. I hate to be self-referential, but again, I got conned out of 5.86 Bitcoin on October 12th of this year. That 5.86 Bitcoin at the time was worth $67,000. Today, 5.86 Bitcoin is worth $159,000. Hey, Delcroix, how's it going, bro? Welcome to the show. you need to understand that this move out of the US dollar into something else is going to be enormous, once in a lifetime thing. And you need to be part of this. You don't want to be left behind on this. And you can become part of this. I put a link in the show notes. You click on it. You just fill out the things, set up an account. When you get your check, you just click buy Bitcoin. And then 2021 will be a banner year, even more than this meager 302%. And I mean, it's a meager return. It sounds insane, but we're now living in a very, very insane time. A very insane time. So, let me see what else I wrote. I got a bunch of notes here. Hopefully I can stay on track. You know, one of the things they do, and this is pretty typical with any sort of any sort of bully or crime scene, is, you know, the government said 14 days to flatten the curve, right? And that was 10 months ago, right? And then they lead you to something else and something else. It gets worse and worse and worse. The incoming Biden administration has a slogan that says, build back better. They know they destroyed everything. They know they destroyed small businesses across this country and even around the world. You know, I don't know what the economy looks like in any specific way out in Europe, but it can't be good. It's just not good. And the slogan "Build Back Better" is not build better, because it was just build better. Well, you'd have to get paid better. You'd have to have better tools. You'd have to have better working conditions, right? So the slogan puts everything on you. You have to build it better. They're not going to give you any tools. They're not going to give you any more money. They're not going to give you more time or a better plan. They're just the entire burden of responsibility is on you. And that's the way it's going to look. That's really, really the way it's going to look. You have insane people. The woman that they're going to put in charge of the Treasury says they're going to use the Federal Reserve to fight racism. Truly insane things. Bolshevik level madness. And these people are going to be in charge. And for everyone that thinks that the U.S. federal government is impotent and sclerotic and can't do this and can't do that, you will be amazed at how powerful and nimble it will become when it wants to become that. So a lot of people got a lot of things wrong. A lot of people got a lot of things wrong, including myself. But mostly I got things right. And so when you've lost faith in everything and hedonism no longer works, and you realize that you're alone and everyone is out for themselves, you're going to want to you're going to want something that's stable and working for you. And the only thing that's going to be is Bitcoin. And you have the chance to get into that. And I cannot overemphasize how important this is to you. Money touches everything and everyone. The more you have of it, the better off you'll be. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but if you have something like this, and like I did, after I got conned out of my Bitcoin, I told you immediately, I dumped thousands of dollars from my checking account. I emptied my gun safe of money. I sold guns. I borrowed money from my bank. You know what I mean? And I did all that between $11,000 and $13,000, and now Bitcoin's at $27,000. So I did the right thing. I got conned. I screwed up. Okay, I was a victim, but I was smart enough to know, certain enough about what the big picture was, that I had to get back in right away. And I'm nowhere near where I used to be. But the future, 2021, is going to do things with money that you have never seen before and will never be seen again in your lifetime. You have a chance to get in front of this and benefit from it. And I believe you should, especially when you're getting a free $600 from the US federal government, which is not free. It's money borrowed in your name, mostly given to foreign countries. That's going to get kicked back to congressmen and senators and all sorts of interest groups. They're going to get kickbacks under the table, and you're going to pay for that, and with interest. So, I'm not in the mood to talk to a lot of people about a lot of things because much of what they're doing is uninteresting to me. If you say, listen, we know tough times are coming and you got to prepare. And in the meantime, we're going to try and entertain ourselves by talking about X, Y, or Z. Oh, I suppose that'll be fine. You have to do something, right? The waiting is the hardest part. But these people are very self-important twats who think that anything that they say has some sort of value or meaning to anyone outside their own head. And so I've muted and unfollowed a lot of people, and I don't want to deal with them. I'm done talking to children. As a boy growing up, I was told children were to be seen and not heard. So, and these people, no matter what their calendar age is, they're largely children. And I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I have work I have to do. I have to try and protect myself. Yeah, Del Croy, it's not going to be 2,000. It authorizes 600, and the 2,000 if cocaine Mitch McConnell decides to increase it. It's not going to be 2,000. By the way, I'm going to have a drink. Open this bottle. I'm not going to get angry like I did last time, but I'm going to have a drink. Let's change the. Let's get more in the spirit of things. What are we doing? There we go. See, we got a Pepe Christmas. Pepe's there with his little Santa hat, and he's got a drink. I got a drink. Hopefully, you have a drink, and then we can, we can muddle our way through this. But understanding that no one's coming to rescue you, and you have to make your own decisions is really scary. It's going to be a lot easier to go on social media and talk smack about civil war and boogaloo and all that stuff. And people will do that because it's easy. They know it's not really going to happen. It's like when there's a beef, there's going to be a fight between two guys, and one guy's real far away. This guy talks, oh, I'm going to do this to him, I'm going to do that to him, when he comes around, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then, then the dude shows up in front of him, and all of a sudden, his voice dries up in his throat, and his courage abandons him. And all of a sudden, his list of punishments that he's gonna lay on this guy all of a sudden evaporates. So on social media, people will get hysterical over all sorts of things. And this is everybody. Bitcoin people do this. There's this device you store Bitcoin on, which is this device here, right? It's like a USB, a specialized USB. Well, this company that sells them, somebody breached their mailing list or something like that, and they lost, I don't know how many million mailing addresses. And this has happened. It happened a while ago, but there was just another wave of it. And the company warned everybody. All right, Delcroix, take care. Company warned everybody, but everyone on Twitter went hysterical, thinking that someone's going to drive up to their house because they found their email address or something. They're going to find their real address and to kidnap them and take their Bitcoin stuff. All these hysterical, shrieking nerds. Thank you, Delcroix. I appreciate the thumbs up. So people are responding to online things like they're real, and that's a really bad idea. It's a really, really bad idea. So I'm going to leave Pepe up there for a while. What else do I have? Yeah, you need to start to protect yourself. And that looks like money. It does. There's no other way to say it. Economic justice ending racism with the Treasury. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to destroy small business? They've already done that. The next thing they're going to do is to look to put you in debt and keep you in debt forever so that you have no assets. You won't have property that you can pass down to your children, an inheritance. You will have debts that you can pass down to your children, like Danegeld, like the sins of the father being visited on the son, that sort of thing. You know, the debts of your parents or someone blood related to you will be yours to discharge. And of course, you'll never get out of debt, right? And this is the next level. And they will do this. And the justification will be racism, 400 years of slavery, whatever, who knows, you know. And there's nothing you can do to stop them. The only thing you can do is to get out of their system. You can't do it all at once, and maybe you can never do it entirely. But again, an alternative method of value, and that's the Bitcoin thing, is the only thing that currently is working worldwide and is now worth $500 billion, which is small, admittedly. $500 billion is very, very tiny. Look who Mrs. Assad is here, Jonathan Paul's here. But you need to begin to save yourself. No one's coming to save you. There's nothing we control. No one has our ideas, right? And they're not incentivizing them. Every single social media leader, you look at that Baked Alaska and the kid Nick Fuentes now, and he's got that Australian cat boy running around dropping N-bombs on live streams and pulling down menorah plaques on video. You know, this is the kid that was like all about, hey, you know, Richard Spencer doesn't understand optics, and it's all about optics, and we have to present a good image. And now they're tearing down menorah stuff and screaming N-bombs at people in the street. They're getting tossed out of bars and pepper spraying the security. Like, this is, you know, it's not difficult to understand that these people they have to be getting paid to make patriotism look that bad. That those are not, how could they be patriots? So no one is on our side, and no one's going to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself. You take that $600 and the best way you can tell Washington to take a long walk off a short pier is stop playing literally their game by their rules. Yeah, Pepe. Listen, Pepe is a resourceful guy. You know what I mean? He's been through a lot in life. A lot of good times, a lot of bad times, and so you know, being an amphibian, you can exist in both worlds. You know, and that's a quality. That's a quality we're all going to have because we're living in a Soviet-style world now. You know, again, like I said earlier, the government has mandated you wear a paper mask to protect against what they claim is the most deadly pandemic in the history of pandemics. And yet 99.7% of the people who get this virus survive. And 85% of the people who get the virus don't even know they have it. I myself have to go into hospitals, and, you know, you hear Trump going, oh, the China virus, and then I go into a hospital and they scan your temperature with those thermometers, you know, those little handheld infrared thermometers that are made in China. So you need the Chinese-made handheld infrared thermometer to tell you whether or not you have the China virus. This is Soviet level kind of stuff. It is for me at any rate. I stand there looking at these people. They don't have any clue. They don't see that at all. Like, they don't see it, you know. And all these medical supplies, all the stuff that was made in China, that's going to protect us from the virus that came from China. And it just goes right past people. So, yeah, one of the things I saw, someone posted that the CDC has changed quietly its categorization. They no longer have COVID as a separate category. They now have what they call PIC, pneumonia, influenza, COVID. So they put all the deaths there, and they do not differentiate what the cause of death was. So it could be whatever you want. If they want to make it COVID, make it COVID. If it was influenza, well, they covered their behinds that way as well. So because everyone knows that pneumonia has disappeared, and there is apparently no flu this year. We all know how that works, right? But this was the type of things that the Russians did. You know, the Soviets did stuff like this. And they're now in charge of a first world economy. Janet Yellen, who's former Fed chairman, she was the woman who famously was giving testimony when someone came up behind her. The dude came up behind her and he held up the sign that said "Buy Bitcoin," and we all went crazy back in the day. We all laughed our heads off. I wonder whatever happened to that guy. But Janet Yellen is going to be in charge of the Treasury under President Biden. She said she's going to use the Treasury to fight racism. I mean, if that is not an overt call to take money from whites who tend to have a net worth of, on average in America, about $150,000, and transfer that wealth to non-whites, specifically African Americans, and African American females, believe it or not, have a net worth of like negative $51. So that's a lot of money to move around, and they're gonna find a way to make you poor and someone else rich, at least temporarily. Yeah, I don't know if I've had malaria. For all I know, I've had COVID since March. You know, I might have had it and lost it 10 times. I can't tell you how many hospitals I've been to and out of. Although I have not appeared in any dancing nurses TikTok videos, which is, you would think with all the places I've been to, I would show up at one of those things, right? And get like a cameo role somewhere in there. But it's funny when I was at the dentist. Oh yeah, so let's talk about the horse meat too. I would try to, last week when I was drunk and I was in a bad mood, and I was trying to tell a dentist story, but I mentioned to the dental hygienist what Jonathan Pollard said, that you have to take antibiotics before you go to the dentist in Africa, because tiny little cut on your gum and you're gonna get like jungle rot in your mouth, and your all your teeth are gonna fall out and you're gonna die. And this woman didn't know that, you know, and she was fascinated by that. But she's a very difficult woman. She is all of her. There was no unreserved compliments. There was no, like, everything had to contain a little spoiler, like, and I find that so demoralizing. You know what I mean? You have to lay there with your mouth open and stuff, and they're poking and prodding, and they go, you know, you're not quite really up to snuff. And I always find that, like, could you just one time just lie to me? Just like, come on, I'm paying you like $300 for this visit or whatever I'm paying. Could you just lie to me? You know what I mean? Just tell me I'm doing, you know, but she couldn't do that. Also, this is in terms of exotic foods. I'm pretty sure I've eaten horse meat twice this year. This is not going to sound good, but there's an Asian supermarket not far from where I live. And I walked over, it's like within walking distance. I walked over there and I bought what they said was chopped meat, and I made a meatloaf out of it. And it was the meatloaf was as dark as this sweat hood. I had never seen it so black. I was like, holy crap, did I burn it? I was like, didn't nothing smell burned. And then it was the darkest looking meat I'd ever seen, and it didn't taste like any beef that I'd ever eaten. And I thought, well, I've done something wrong, or it didn't even taste like it. I was like, is this like, was it not fresh? Was it about to go bad? I didn't know. And, but I ate it. And I'm trying to think what the packet was, like 1.68 pounds. It was like a lot. I didn't eat it all at once, but I ate it, and I didn't die, but it didn't taste like beef. And I, believe it or not, I went and bought it a second time, like a week later. and same exact thing. And I was like, whatever the F this stuff is, and I just made gravy and I covered it in gravy. I was like, this is not any kind of beef. And then I was like, well, what is it? And I realized it's probably horse meat, because there's a European supermarket chain called Aldi, ALDI, that got caught selling horse meat in England as chop meat, as minced beef, and that was some years ago. And I thought, how could people not know? And now, having eaten horse meat, and I'm almost 100% sure it was horse meat, because I've eaten buffalo and it didn't taste like buffalo. That it's going to come out someday. I don't know if I should report them or not report them. I don't know who to even report them to, but it seems the stereotype of the Chinese or the Asians will eat any damn thing. That stereotype is alive and well, and I guess they figure there's some profit in selling you, something from a glue factory rather than Brown Bessie from the meadow. Oh well, but that is as exotic a food thing as I've gotten, and I didn't even intend that, but I guess I can take that off my list. Have you eaten horse meat? Yes. So that's kind of where we're at, and I think that everyone needs to stay super calm and do stuff that's going to help you calm down, because it's going to be a really bad. I think it's going to be a really bad, stressful time. I really believe, when Biden says our darkest days are in front of us, he ain't lying. I don't think he means it the way I think he means it, or I understand it in a different way than he does. But you're going to find out that the federal government is a lot more nimble and a lot more capable than you ever thought it was when it wants to be. And I don't know I have no idea what the pushback is going to look like, but it's going to be pretty intense. So, what do we have? We have Mrs. Assad in the chat. The blacks will go spend it on bling, a tacky vehicle, and 40s and be broke again. Yeah, that's true. To be Friday rich, as they say. That's why I said black females, I think, were the ones that are most often employed, most consistently employed, are still like something like negative $51 or $55. Like, that's really, somebody actually came up with that figure. I don't know how they did the math. And on average, if you look at whites who own homes and property, et cetera, there's some people at the high end, some people at the low end, of course, in the middle getting thinner and thinner, but the average nationwide is about 156,000 USD. That was a couple of years ago. It might be a little higher now due to inflation, but to equalize that is going to be the task of the Treasury Department, and that's going to be insane policies. I mean, in this last year, they printed 22% of all the dollar bills ever created in the history of the United States were created in this past year, and we're not 22% richer. We're not 22% less in debt. We aren't 22% freer. It's worse, whether you see it or you don't see it. So I think that people, again, and if you want to talk about whatever you want to talk about, but I don't think I want to participate in it a whole lot, because I just think the best thing you can do is prepare to get out of the way. You're not going to fight anything. You're not going to make a difference. You're not going to wake up the masses. None of that stuff's going to happen. They'll wake up too late. They'll make the wrong move. They'll do something panicky and stupid, and then there'll be a big consequence. You don't want to be in that crowd. You'd rather be somewhere else, off to the side. It may pain you to watch people you know and care about march forward into that buzzsaw, but that may be what has to happen. Like I said, I get frustrated, and I wish people could make better choices, but they're not going to. Anyway, yeah, try not to get too maudlin. Part of being black-pilled is thinking really negative thoughts about everything. Do not focus so much on death and disease. I mean, if that's your distraction, you're gonna find another distraction. thinking about disease like that is terrible. Jonathan Poll's just going to tell you that, not only does the malaria medication work within 48 hours, but you can buy it from an open air market in Ghana for like 38 cents a pill, and the guy will give you, a free bottle of ginger beer to wash it down with, So, but 3 days of flu, that's, how would you even know? You could have had COVID 4 times. You know what I mean? You could be, you could be studied. Maybe you could sell your body to science, Jonathan Poll. Maybe Gilead Sciences or Novartis or one of those vaccine companies. You could let them do the reverse jab. You know what I mean? And maybe you got some antibodies that they could copy up using stem cells, and you could monetize your immunological resistance. Some sort of, if you're going to sell out, you might as well sell out your whatever. If you're going to sell out, sell out, right? Not just influencing people. You can actually sell your actual blood. Mrs. Assad in the chat. I love reading about diseases and etc. I read 3 different medical encyclopedias for fun when I was in junior high school. It's too funny. One of my nieces who went into the medical field, she used to watch. I'm trying to think of when she first saw it. She was maybe like 14 or 15. Back when broadcasting open heart surgery was a big deal. Like this was like the late 1980s. It was a controversial. They're going to broadcast, an actual open heart surgery, and should they show it? And do you remember how controversial that stuff used to seem? And she would watch that, and she was fascinated. Like she absolutely fell in love with that, and ended up going into the medical field because what most people find difficult to watch, a human body being cut open. Others can take. I don't know. They can just react to it differently. They look at it from a clinical worldview, and it works for them. Don't really think I could do that unless I had to, and luckily I've never really had to. Closest I came was when my friend Chuck hit riding motorcycles in the Poconos in October, Columbus Day in 2008. And he hit a car, and his bike went this way, and he went that way, and he flew into a ditch. He thankfully fell on his back because he had snapped his femur bone, the big thick bone in your thigh between your knee and your hip. The biggest, thickest, heaviest bone in your body was snapped, and it poked right through the muscle and the skin and his the motorcycle pants and stuff, and the bone was sticking out, horror movie style. He didn't know it. He knew he broke his leg, but he was still in shock and he couldn't feel it. That was a pretty lousy day, seeing that. But luckily, one of the other guys riding with us was a doctor, my buddy Theo, who used to be on my old channel, but he's not on this channel. And I ran down the road and I flagged somebody down, and this was one of those things that I don't know if I ever told the story. This was it was called Beaver Run Road or something like that, and somewhere in the Poconos. And I flagged a guy down in a Subaru car who just happens to be an off-duty EMT, who just happens to have in the back of his Subaru a ton of medical supplies, and who just happens to be a motorcycle rider himself. So he, he gets on the cell phone and he gets help exactly there. He was from that area. He knew exactly what road we were on. We didn't know where the hell we were. We were in like the woods of Pennsylvania. So there's street signs and stuff, but they're at the end of every road, and we were whatever, pretty discombobulated. So, and then we ended up having to load because the ambulance crew was a guy about this thin and a woman about that big. They looked like Laurel and Hardy, male and female Laurel and Hardy. No way they could get the gurney down through the ditch in the road to where Chuck was laying on the embankment. They picked him up and put him on the thing, but me and Theo and Mike, the other guy, went to the ditch and got the gurney up into the ambulance, and the ambulance took off. And then me and Theo drove to Allentown Trauma Center. We rode there. And at the time, well, I don't know if he still smokes, but I was a smoker at the time. He and I both smoked. And at one point we stopped and to have a cigarette because it was like 75 miles to Allendale. I can't remember how far it was. We stopped for a cigarette, and I asked him, I said, Theo, what's the chance Chuck loses his leg? I asked a tough question because I saw the guy's bone sticking out of his leg. And he goes, nah, it's probably not going to happen. And I was like, really? How could you be so confident? He said, because clean breaks like that, he says, they're easy to fix. He says they're, relatively easy to fix. He says it's a crushing injury where the bone is in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. That's what's really difficult for them to fix. But if it's a clean break, man, it's a piece of cake to a trauma surgeon. And that's the way it worked out. They put a steel rod in there and they closed it up, and within like a little over a year, Chuck was back riding motorcycles again. So bad things can happen and they can fix it, but I never found. I'm glad that they have that technology. I'm glad that I'm really not around that too much, but I don't find that sort of thing. Seeing viscera and entrails and that sort of thing, I don't find that particularly fascinating. I understand dealing with that's necessary, but I am not made of that kind of stuff. But I admire those who are. Anyway, look at this. We're coming up on a whole hour. I didn't scream and curse and yell at anybody. Got my nice little Pepe picture. I think I had another picture. Hold on, let me get rid of Pepe. What else did I have that I was going to do? Another great. What is that? Another great. Oh yeah, this was one. This was a fun one. This one was fun. This was in the how it started, how it's going vein of memes, which is pretty good. This one was floating around on Facebook and stuff. This was I've got a big kick out of this. Well, maybe I'll do it like this. Maybe make a bigger picture. But it was a good Christmas meme. Having a laugh. That's obviously on the left. It's Apollo and whatever his horse is taking the chariot across the sky and Santa. And I posted that on Facebook and I got like 14 likes in 10 minutes. People are like, "Oh my God, I never saw that before." So just teasing. You missed the yelling last time? What do you mean you missed? You want me to yell again, or you just missed the stream and you probably didn't miss much, to be perfectly honest. But luckily, the one thing today, I left work early because there wasn't much going on. So I left work like 3 hours early, and what I did was I bought some pork chops. I did this pork chop recipe that I saw on YouTube, which actually worked out really good, which I didn't think was going to work out good. But after you season the pork chops, you season them with allspice, which I thought was a little bit weird. But you kind of sear them in a pan, and then I would set them aside. You want to sear them, just get some color on them, some onion and garlic. and then a can of like I used white beans. I used like whatever cannelli, but I some kind of white beans, and some cumin, oregano, rosemary, and what else? Yeah, and then I had like a can of tomatoes and a couple of olives. Believe it or not, like a handful of olives, and cooked it up for like 5 minutes. Put the whole thing in a baking tray. Like I got a Pyrex baking tray. Put the pork chops down, covered over with all that, with the tomatoes and everything else. And I didn't. I think I went a little too heavy on the cumin because it was kind of the dominant flavor. It didn't blow everything else out, but I think it was a little too dominant. But shockingly good pork chop dish. So kosher pork chops. Are there kosher pork chops? There cannot be kosher pork chops. You guys know that there's. I retweet that guy, that kosher certified guy on Twitter all the time. They actually have their own app that can tell you walk to the supermarket and find out what's kosher certified and what's not kosher certified. It's very difficult to find stuff that's not kosher certified in American supermarkets, but if you can make that choice, it's always worth making. But our friend is the Small Hats, Jared Kushner's father, who hired a prostitute to entrap his own brother and videotaped the whole thing and sent it to his brother's wife. That's they even do it to themselves, right? They're probably worse to themselves than they even are to us, because they're maybe not. That Kushner's father got a pardon. Oh, man. It's like you got to realize how Trump was never, and none of these guys is ever what they claim they are. He gave up from the beginning. The first time he sent those missiles into Syria, based on whatever BS crap that they came up with. It was a gas attack, blah blah blah. He didn't even bother checking. McRib. What do you have, a time machine, Jonathan Paul? Do you have one of those? Do you have like a silver 1986 DeLorean that you go back in time to McDonald's in the 1980s where you can have a McRib? They don't have McRibs. I think I actually worked when I was a kid. I worked in McDonald's. I think when that thing came out, that was terrible. The thing was terrible. How is that? That's just horrible. That's absolutely. I'm not sure I would admit that if I did that. Yeah, Mrs. Assad. There's a guy I work with. This guy Paul, who's he's what did he say? Was Syrian, or he said he does? It's weird the way he says it. He says I'm from the side of the river where all the terrorists are, but he was trying to tell me. I was trying to find what was that food you told me to eat one time? Some Lebanese food. There's Lebanese bakeries in Paterson, New Jersey, which is not too terribly far from where I usually wait for work. And if there was some kind of thing you sent me a picture of one time, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I thought I could. I'm sure I could find it in Queens, but this guy Paul was saying that it was kind of like, what was it, like a Lebanese pizza or a Lebanese? It wasn't like a pizza. It was like something else, right? What was it? Right then, you sent it to me like a year ago. Some kind of okay, nafe. Is that how am I pronouncing it correctly? Nafe. I'm going to have to go to one of these Lebanese joints in Paterson and tell them I know Mrs. Assad and I want some of that. See how it works out. And if that doesn't work, I'll go, hey, I'm friends with Paul. Come on. He's a good guy. He's a real nice guy. He works at the same place, not the same place I work, the same industry. Oh, it's a dessert. It's a dessert. Oh, okay. So you would find it in a bakery. That would be a good idea. I'll have to Kanafe. What is it? I don't listen, Jonathan, I don't know who she's laughing at, you or Lamicon, leprechaun. I don't know. Leprechaun. That was Delcroy was here. He could slice up some leprechaun and eat it as dessert. But conife. All right, I'll try conife. But yeah, I don't know how to pronounce stuff that's in McRib. So the K is pronounced. See, I was thinking like don't pronounce the K. But like a silent K. But whatever. There's what I'll go. Listen, I'll go in there. I'll mangle the word. Everyone will laugh at me. You know what I mean? And then hopefully they'll give you the piece that's not poisoned. And poison this guy. He made fun of our language. Okay, here you go. Here, drive away. Go die over by Teterboro Airport. And I have it with ice cream. Huh. Okay. I'm trying to keep the calories down. Although, to be honest, my weight doesn't really go over 200 anymore. I'm like 200 and under, which it's not bad. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It is not a terrible thing, but I have to eat a lot of junk because I'm on the road a lot. I end up eating a lot of junk. That's why when I come home and I realize, and people aren't lying when they tell you home cooked food. And I'm actually a pretty decent cook, believe it or not. Is so dramatically better than anything you get outside. And I understand people are just desperate to go outside and just do something. People want to go out and they want to eat. There's a category. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a category of videos that's a horrible category on YouTube called a mukbang. Have you guys heard what a mukbang is? A mukbang is where somebody has a video like this and they pile a whole bunch of food in front of them and they just eat the food on camera and you hear the noises they make while they're eating whatever they eat. Barbecue I don't know where the word mukbang comes from. I think maybe it's Filipino, but they have this enormous quantity of food and they just eat it on camera and that's a video and people watch that in the hundreds and in the thousands. And there are people who they just do different mukbangs from different ethnicities and different things. And it's not a cooking video, right? It's not a how-to. It's not like, hey, look, here's my regional dish or my ethnic dish or this is my grandma's take on whatever. This is how my family did X, Y, Z. It's just people ordering takeout and then eating takeout on camera by themselves. Maybe sometimes there's a couple doing it, there's a male and female team, and I'm like, this is the worst use of social media maybe that I've ever seen. So you have to be careful. You don't want to see anything with the word mukbang, MUKBANG. It's too strange, and a lot of them are single women, late 30s single women whom probably should have a husband and could, if they could cook the stuff that they were eating, they could surely get a husband. But the problem is they keep wanting to, have someone else do the cooking for them. So that's probably the reason. Oh, it's Korean? Millennial Woes did pizza mukbangs. But it's gorging yourself on camera. It isn't. To be honest, if I had a lot of money, what I always thought would be a clever food show. Because listen, everybody likes food, right? And everybody eats, and we live in a world of food now, and a lot of, at least at the moment, there's a lot of things are plentiful, and there are a lot of different choices. But the problem I always have with the Food Network is that they always stop at whatever the proteins and the this and the that and the other, the rustic version of anything. The food has a certain importance, of course. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's the people you eat with, right? I would think that a really interesting show would be a dinner party, right? I mean, in New York City, way back in the 1800s, there's the hotel is still there. It's called the Hotel Algonquin, and there was there's a restaurant there. It's a famous restaurant in the hotel, and there was the Algonquin Round Table. This was like around the turn of the century, like around the 1900s, and all these famous writers and artists would go, and they'd sit and they'd have dinner, and they would have these the most fabulous of conversations, because you have all these bright, articulate people who are, had a bunch of different viewpoints, and they would get together and they would have these super things, and it was the Algonquin Round Table, and that sort of thing, the type of conversations that might go around a table when there's food and there's people gathered, that would be at least as interesting and probably more interesting than the food, Again, I remember this was another motorcycle thing way, way, way back in the days, like they're talking about like 2005. I had a buddy named Brian who was an architect in Manhattan. He lived in 110th Street near Columbia University. And he had really fast bikes, and he was one of the first really sport bike guys, high performance motorcycle guys I knew. And there's a motorcycle racing series that was really popular. It still, I guess, is done, but it's called, and they race all around the world. It's an all European thing. It's like the whitest of white sports. There's almost no non-whites in it. Anyway, they race motorcycles around these twisty tracks all around the globe, and it's called MotoGP, or Motorcycle Grand Prix. And I was a fan of it. My friends were fans of it. And Brian, used to have to. I think Manhattan Cable was the only one that had it for a long time, on the East Coast. They would broadcast these races. So the race would be like on Saturday in Europe, and they would broadcast it in America on Sunday. And a bunch of guys would get together and we would watch the races. And depending on where they raced, it would be sometimes in France, Italy, they'd be racing Portugal, they'd race in Australia, they'd race in Brazil, they'd race in America, And we were chilling at Brian's apartment one time, getting drunk and stuff. Me and him were the only two motorcycle guys. Everybody else was like other dudes, I don't know whether they were his friends. He was an architect. He knew a lot of people. And I said to him, I said, wouldn't it be cool? I said, because he was like, we're having fun and we're talking shit. And I said, wouldn't it be great if every time, whatever the race was, because you could see what the race schedule was. So I was like, whatever the race was, we could have that kind of food. We could have a race party, and we would have that kind of food. And he was like all lit up with the idea. And it never really came off. The closest that anything came, there was a bar in Queens. In what section of Queens? I can't remember what it's called. A place was called Bar Matchless, Matchless. Matchless was the name of an English motorcycle company back in the day. Anyway, it was a heavily Polish section. Long Island City, I guess it was. Long Island City, Queens. Like half of the New York City high performance motorcycle guys would show up at this bar on Monday night to watch the races, which had been broadcast on Sunday, and then would be rebroadcast at this bar. And all the motorcycle guys, we would push out all the locals, and there'd be like helmets, jackets everywhere, and like motorcycles parked all over the place around this park. And we would take this place over, And again, back then, in those days, I was a cigarette smoker, so you still had to go outside to smoke cigarettes. And you'd be out there smoking and whatever, talking with people. And some people had seen the result on the internet, and they would be like, they'd be talking. And before you talk to somebody, you'd say, do you know what the result of the race is? Because none of us want to know what the result was before watching the race. We want to watch it all fresh. So it was very fan oriented, and people go like, I know what the result is. Like, all right, I'm not talking to you. Like, all right. And then you would like walk away, and no one would think anything of it, and then you go back in and watch the race. And it was a big thing. And then when the race was over, you'd ride home, we'd go, I would never break the speed limit, but some people might occasionally break the speed limit on the way home. But I would ride I would live in Staten Island, have to drive through Brooklyn into Queens just to do this once a week. And but when you're enthusiastic about stuff and you're with other kooks who think the same way, it seems like a fun thing and a worthwhile thing. And I guess it was fun to do. But that was much more IRL than what you have going on today. These mukbang people, yes, we all eat and whatever, everyone has an appetite, but it's the company you share when you sit and eat. And I just thought that if you get a group of smart people together with different worldviews who would not be offended or triggered by each other, to sit down and have a bunch of food and have some drinks and just record the conversations, I would think that would be more interesting than a show about whatever exotic food ingredient the Food Network is pushing this week. Because if you ever watch the Food Network, and I haven't seen TV in a long time, I don't know if they're still on, but I guess they still are, right? It's always about this exotic ingredient or some weird way to do something. And it's like, there's a limited amount you can do with proteins and carbohydrates and sugars. You know what I mean? There's only a certain number of ways you can combine them before it becomes meaningless. And the company you keep, the people you sit and eat with, and the type of conversations you would have, would, I think, be a much more interesting show. But they won't do anything like that because interesting people are going to say stuff that's controversial. They're going to say stuff that's politically incorrect. They're going to look at ideas in a way that is outside the approved lens, and you would never be able to do that. But I think that something like that would be genius. You know what I mean? Someone would host a dinner party. We're all going to have whatever, man, like French food, right? We're going to do a French thing, and we're going to do a standard 7-course French meal. And people are going to show up, different men and women with different backgrounds, and smart people who, would be unafraid to speak their minds about whatever pops up. But that's not possible in this day and age. But I think a virtual version of that, if it were possible, if there was some kind of free speech culture and you could get together, and I guess people could hide their identity, put up Pepe's or something like that, and just talk. I think it would be super interesting, right? Like the best thing about live streams, when you had multi-person live streams, when you got the chemistry really right, and you had 4, 5, 6 people talking about a topic, and it wasn't degenerating into a shit show, and people weren't trying to one up each other or be the edgiest guy in the conversation, was like a kind of magic, but it's a very, very tough bit of chemistry to pull off. Nick's Greek Diner, yeah. Baby Socrates Diner. That would be a good name for it. You need smart people with different worldviews that could defend their worldview and say interesting stuff, and that's kind of tough to find. I think that's exceptionally tough to find. But the nature of the internet is you could find people like that, Except how would you get them all in one place and mic them up and not have it turn into a disaster? I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, it seems like we're so close to the possibility of being able to do it, but we can't quite do it. Instead, we get stuck with mukbangs. You get stuck with some minimum wage attention whore, who orders $125 worth of Mexican food and just gobbles down like 7,000 calories on camera, and you're like, well, I guess, and they don't even know. It's not even like they can walk you through, like, oh, this is Chipotle, thus and such. And the Chipotle is a jalapeno pepper that's been smoked and blah, 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 and hung and dried. And like they don't know. They're just like, stuff in their face. And people will watch that. It's a bizarre, we're living in some very bizarre times. Very, very bizarre times. But Nick's Greek Diner, you want to laugh, Spike Lee. I always remember this. I remember being so offended by this back in the day. Spike Lee, when he was still big, like way back in the early 90s, he was talking about producing a TV show where a group of old black dudes hang out in a diner and they discuss life and philosophy and whatnot. And I'm like, I don't know where there's some mythical diner in Harlem that like doesn't exist and probably never existed, you know. But he had pitched this idea for a show that was like so fucking ridiculous, and I'm like, nah, yeah, I don't think you guys could do that, you know. But it was going to be a bunch of old black dudes, you know, who are not talking about sexifying people or or you know, systemic racism. They were gonna discuss from a African American point of view philosophy and science and this, that, and the other. And I thought that is the most ridiculous thing. You guys are not at all capable of that sort of thing. Not capable. That level goes down and down really fast, you know. But whatever. That's you know, not everything is for everyone, right? So yeah, I think that would be fun. I think if you could get a bunch of people together, it would have to be in a big city like New York or Philly or Chicago or something like that. Get a bunch of people together. There'd be XYZ foods, and the menu would be part of it, right? It's the food porn kind of thing. Here's the dishes we're having. Blah, 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 blah. It's going to be made in this way and blah, 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 blah. It's Portuguese, blah, 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 whatever, you know, with some weirdo, like those things that they have. It's not a shrimp. It's not a lobster. It's like in between. Who knows? I don't know. And you'd have your wine selection and everyone could participate. Everyone could like tune in like, oh, we're going to do whatever. And it's going to be 6 smart people sitting around eating and drinking and having conversation about, I don't know, whatever comes up, you know, maybe current events or whatever. Without fear of repercussions. I think that would be interesting because that would be a dinner party, you know, that everyone could participate, or a lot of people could participate in virtually. And the Food Network could pull something like that off because it's a super popular thing. They have the reach, whatever. They got the celebrity chefs. You could have this celebrity chef do this week and that week and this week. One day he would be the guy who cooks the thing. Next day he would be next week he'd be the guy who eats the thing. It could be great. It would be much better than the little Jewish twat that was like, okay, you served us a glass of milk, which, okay, it was cold, it was creamy, but I did not feel your character in it. I didn't hear your life story in this glass of milk. And you're like, you fucking dickhead. It's a fucking glass of milk. Just fucking drink it and like move on, you know? But when they have those like, you know, chef competition shows that like, I didn't feel your ethnic character fully come through the dessert. And you're like, what the fuck are you even talking? You want to smack these people right off the screen. That's how long it's been since I've seen the Food Network. I don't know if they still have shows like that, but it was the most irritating thing ever. You know, someone who just sits there, who just, you know, literally, who sits and eats while other people perform culinary magic, you know, in front of them in minutes under pressure, you know, and then they critique these people. I'm like, I don't think that's a good show. You know, I never liked that sort of stuff. They turn people who worked really hard and dedicate themselves to the service industry, and they would turn them into like, you know, dancing monkeys. And I just, that never worked for me. But it was a popular style of show for a long time. But smart people having interesting convos without fear that you're going to lose your job or have negative social repercussions. That would be interesting as could be, and I bet a lot of people would tune in for that, you know. But whatever, it ain't gonna happen unless everyone's anonymous, and I don't think that's very likely. So, Millennial Woes. How could you do Millennial Woes pizza? What kind of pizza do they have in England? I mean, I don't want to offend my huge Anglo audience, but I only have 10 subscribers. So how many people could be Anglos? Pizza mukbangs. That's like that guy from Barstool Sports. The guy who, by the way, he's doing some good stuff with helping out small businesses. He's a jerk. By the way, the only man to lose money on Bitcoin in 2020. Cheers. He bought and sold, saying it's too volatile, and as soon as he sold it, went through the roof. We laughed at him because that's what we do. But it's tough to laugh at a guy who is already worth $250 million. Not that many of us worth $250 million, and I will not be worth $250 million, even if I did still have my 5.86 Bitcoin. I don't think I would live long enough to see 250 mil. Still and all. Yeah, people who do that, like what I'm doing, sit in front of a camera. I don't know, I guess you feel pressure to do stuff and say stuff, and you just make some bad decisions, get it wrong, but you roll with it. What else are you going to do? So anyway, we're coming up on an hour 20. I've held two people, Mrs. Karen Assad and Jonathan Pohl, tolerating me while I ramble. Anyway, I'm really very serious. I think terrible Weimar things are coming in the next 10 or 15 years. Most fiat currencies or paper currencies have a lifespan of 127 years. The U.S. Federal Reserve Corporation started issuing U.S. currency 107 years ago in 1913. On average, like I said, fiat currencies go from whatever their initial value was to zero in 127 years. I don't think this is a very long time. Most of the exceptionally wealthy people in this world know that gold is not a good store of, it may be a good store of value, but it's a bad medium of exchange. And they're not. There are so many laws locking it down right now that they're not going to choose that. Many of them are choosing Bitcoin, believe it or not. You can believe it or not. And if you follow Elon Musk on Twitter, he's tweeting about it. The guy he was tweeting about it with, a guy named Michael Saylor, said, "Hey, Elon, I'll tell you how to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin if you want." And then the tweets kind of stopped. And then Michael Saylor got interviewed a few days later. And they said, "Hey, how was that thing between you and Elon Musk?" And he just, boom, he shut down. He said, "Nah, you know what? I don't want to reveal any private conversations." You need to understand that electric car boy and rockets to the moon boy and bright, prosperous future boy is doing this. You can do it too. You don't have to hurt yourself or break the bank, but you should probably start building a life raft that's going to work under any circumstances, because the lunatics that run the treasury and the government are going to like full speed ahead into that iceberg. And all your politics and all your nonsense aside, you're going to need something to survive that. And the more things you have that are working in your favor, the better. So if you can, in the time of lunacy and craziness, make a clear, smart decision that works for you and improves for you, even like I did. Like I said, 5 minutes after, not 5 minutes after I got robbed, within an hour of getting robbed, of getting scammed, I jumped right back in. And that decision has turned out to be the right decision. I'm not happy that I got robbed, but knowing that I immediately forced myself to make new choices or the same choices again and push myself as hard as I could now puts me in a better position than I would have been. Had I done nothing and just cried in my beer, about what a victim I was, I would not, I would not be where I am today. And I'm not saying I'm saying I'm in a better place, and the future is going to be brighter still. Not as bright as it could have been, but brighter still. And I strongly advise you to Set aside your religious views, your political views, your other views. Just try to use your core understanding of who's in charge of this and what their outcomes have been for people who are not in the inner circle. And do you want to be outside? Do you want to be outside that inner circle? No, you don't want to be. You don't want to be a kulak. You don't want to be. You don't want to be a victim of the Holodomor. Now, they're not going to starve you to death. That's the 1930s. People aren't going to be dying and cannibalizing their children. That's not going to happen. Not in America. But you can be ruined financially. And your anger and sense of powerlessness needs a focus. And if you could escape things, and you can, and I'm telling you, you can. This is the way. And I really think, well, listen, there's nothing else, right? You should try it at least a little bit. And if you're going to get a free $600, which is not free, you're going to pay interest on that. And you feel that that's an insult. And you wish you could tell Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi where to stuff it. This is one way to do it. That you will, a decision I think you'll be happy with for a long time. So you have to make your own choices. I know you don't understand it, but you don't understand microwave ovens, and you don't understand color TV, and you don't understand how electricity gets in your house, but it works anyway. Put aside your objections and take a chance here, because things are going to get crazy, and you will not be able to resist the craziness forever. Having one clear beacon, something that's positive and working for you, is going to do a lot for your psychology in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think that's more important than anything else. Anyway, we're coming up on what? We're coming up on 90 minutes already. Minute 26. Let's end this episode of Neeks. Now you know I had too much to drink already. Nick's Greek Diner, and I will try not. I will not. Probably not yell at you again, because I'm just too exhausted. Everybody have a happy New Year. I wish you really the best. But you have to participate in it. You have to do that yourself. It's not going to fall into your hands. And stay calm and do not overreact. And I'll see you guys, I don't know, maybe next week. Hopefully I don't work too hard and I'm not in a bad mood. Anyway, good night, everybody. I'll talk to you again in the future.